Petra was waiting in the corridor that led to the battle room. "Wait a minute," she said to Ender. "Rabbit Army just went in, and it takes a few minutes to change to the next battle room." Ender sat down beside her. "There's more to the battle room than just switching from one to the next," he said. "For instance, why is there gravity in the corridor outside the room just before we go in?" Petra closed her eyes. "And if the battle rooms are really free-floating, what happens when one is connected? Why doesn't it start to move with the rotation of the school?" Ender nodded. "These are the mysteries," Petra said in a deep whisper. "Do not pry into them. Terrible things happened to the last soldier who tried. He was discovered hanging by his feet from the ceiling of the bathroom, with his head stuffed in the toilet." Of course she was joking, but the message was clear. So I'm not the first person to ask the question. "You remember this, little boy?" When she said little boy, it sounded friendly, not contemptuous. "They never tell you any more truth than they have to. But any kid with brains knows that there have been some changes in science since the days of old Mazer Rackham and the victorious fleet. Obviously, we can now control gravity, turn it on and off, change the direction, maybe reflect it. I've thought of lots of neat things you could do with gravity weapons and gravity drives on starships. And think how starships could move near planets. Maybe tear big chunks out of them by reflecting the planet's own gravity back on itself, only from another direction, and focused down to a smaller point." But they say nothing. Ender understood more than she said. Manipulation of gravity was one thing. Deception by the officers was another. But the most important message was this: the adults are the enemies, not the other armies. They do not tell us the truth. "Come, little boy," she said. "The battle room is ready." Petra's hands are steady. The enemy is deadly. She giggled. "Petra the poet, they call me. They also say you're crazy as a loon." "Better believe it, baby butt." She had 10 target balls in a bag. Ender held onto her suit with one hand and the wall with the other, to steady her as she threw them, hard, in different directions. In the null gravity, they bounced every which way. "Let go of me," she said. She shoved off, spinning deliberately. With a few deft hand moves, she steadied herself, and began aiming carefully at ball after ball. When she shot one, its glow changed from white to red. Ender knew that the color change lasted less than 2 minutes. Only one ball had changed back to white when she got the last one. She rebounded accurately from one wall and came at high speed back to Ender. He caught her and held her against her own rebound, one of the first techniques they had taught him as a launchie. "You're good," he said. "None better, and you're going to learn how to do it." Petra taught him to hold his arm straight, to aim with his whole arm. Something most soldiers don't realize is that the farther away your target is, the longer you have to hold the beam within about a 2-centimeter circle. It's the difference between 1/10 of a second and 1/2 a second. But in battle, that's a long time. A lot of soldiers think they missed when they were right on target, but they moved away too fast. So you can't use your gun like a sword, swish, swish, slice them in half. You got to aim. She used the ball collar to bring the targets back, then launched them slowly, one by one. Ender fired at them. He missed every one. "Good," she said. "You don't have any bad habits." "I don't have any good ones either," he pointed out. "I give you those." They didn't accomplish much that first morning. Mostly talk. how to think while you're aiming. You've got to hold your own motion and your enemy's motion in your mind at the same time. You've got to hold your arm straight out and aim with your body, so in case your arm is frozen, you can still shoot. Learn where your trigger actually fires and ride the edge, so you don't have to pull so far each time you fire. Relax your body, don't tense up, it makes you tremble. It was the only practice Ender got that day. During the Army's drills in the afternoon, Ender was ordered to bring his desk and do his schoolwork, sitting in a corner of the room. Bonzo had to bring all his soldiers to the battle room, but he didn't have to use them. Ender did not do his schoolwork, however. If he couldn't drill as a soldier, he could study Bonzo as a tactician. Salamander Army was divided into the standard 4 toons of 10 soldiers each. Some commanders set up their toons so that A toon consisted of the best soldiers and D toon had the worst. Bonzo had mixed them so that each consisted of good soldiers and weaker ones. Except that B toon had only 9 boys. Ender wondered who had been transferred to make room for him. It soon became plain that the leader of Toon B was new. No wonder Bonzo was so disgusted. He had lost a toon leader to get Ender. And Bonzo was right about another thing. Ender was not ready. All the practice time was spent working on maneuvers. Toons that couldn't see each other practiced performing precision operations together with exact timing. Toons practiced using each other to make sudden changes of direction without losing formation. All these soldiers took for granted skills that Ender didn't have. The ability to make a soft landing and absorb most of the shock. Accurate flight. Course adjustment using the frozen soldiers floating randomly through the room. Rolls, spins, dodges, sliding along the walls. A very difficult maneuver, and yet one of the most valuable, since the enemy couldn't get behind you. Even as Ender learned how much he did not know, he also saw things he could improve on. The well-rehearsed formations were a mistake. It allowed the soldiers to obey shouted orders instantly, but it also meant they were predictable. Also, the individual soldiers were given little initiative. Once a pattern was set, they were to follow it through. There was no room for adjustment to what the enemy did against the formation. Ender studied Bonzo's formations like an enemy commander would, noting ways to disrupt the formation. During the free play that night, Ender asked Petra to practice with him. "No," she said. "I want to be a commander someday, so I've got to play the game room." It was a common belief that the teachers monitored the games and spotted potential commanders there. Ender doubted it, though. Toon leaders had a better chance to show what they might do as commanders than any video player. But he didn't argue with Petra. The after-breakfast practice was generous enough. Still, he had to practice. And he couldn't practice alone, except a few of the basic skills. Most of the hard things required partners or teams. If only he still had Alai or Shen to practice with. Well, why shouldn't he practice with them? He had never heard of a soldier practicing with launchies, but there was no rule against it. It just wasn't done. Launchies were held in too much contempt. Well, Ender was still being treated like a launchie anyway. He needed someone to practice with, and in return he could help them learn some of the things he saw the other boys doing. "Hey, the great soldier returns," said Bernard. Ender stood in the doorway of his old barracks. He'd only been away for a day, but already it seemed like an alien place, and the others of his launch group were strangers. Almost he turned around and left. But there was Alai, who had made their friendship sacred. Alai was not a stranger. Ender made no effort to conceal how he was treated in Salamander Army. And they're right, I'm about as useful as a sneeze in a spacesuit. Alai laughed, and other launchies started to gather around. Ender proposed his bargain. Free play, every day, working hard in the battle room, under Ender's direction. They would learn things from the armies, from the battles Ender would see. He would get the practice he needed in developing soldier skills. We'll get ready together. A lot of boys wanted to come too. Sure, Ender said, if you're coming to work. If you're just farting around, you're out. I don't have any time to waste. They didn't waste any time. Ender was clumsy, trying to describe what he had seen, working out ways to do it. But by the time free play ended, they had learned some things. They were tired, but they were getting the knack of a few techniques. Where were you? Asked Bonzo. Ender stood stiffly by his commander's bunk. Practicing in the battle room. I hear you had some of your old launchie group with you. I couldn't practice alone. I won't have any soldiers in Salamander Army hanging around with launchies. You're a soldier now. Ender regarded him in silence. Did you hear me, Wiggin? Yes, sir. No more practicing with those little farts. May I speak to you privately? Asked Ender. It was a request that commanders were required to allow. Bonzo's face went angry, and he led Ender out into the corridor. Listen, Wiggin, I don't want you. I'm trying to get rid of you, but don't give me any problems or I'll paste you to the wall. A good commander, thought Ender, doesn't have to make stupid threats. Bonzo grew annoyed at Ender's silence. Look, you asked me to come out here, now talk. Sir, you were correct not to place me in a tune. I don't know how to do anything. I don't need you to tell me when I'm correct. But I'm going to become a good soldier. I won't screw up your regular drill, but I'm going to practice, and I'm going to practice with the only people who will practice with me, and that's my launchies. You'll do what I tell you, you little bastard. That's right, sir. I'll follow all the orders that you're authorized to give. But free play is free. No assignments can be given. None. By anyone. He could see Bonzo's anger growing hot. Hot anger was bad. Ender's anger was cold, and he could use it. Bonzo's was hot, and so it used him. Sir, I've got my own career to think of. I won't interfere in your training and your battles, but I've got to learn sometime. I didn't ask to be put in your army. You're trying to trade me as soon as you can. But nobody will take me if I don't know anything, will they? Let me learn something, and then you can get rid of me all the sooner and get a soldier you can really use. Bonzo was not such a fool that anger kept him from recognizing good sense when he heard it. Still, he couldn't let go of his anger immediately. While you're in Salamander Army, you'll obey me. If you try to control my free play, I can get you iced. It probably wasn't true, but it was possible. Certainly if Ender made a fuss about it, interfering with free play could conceivably get Bonzo removed from command. Also, there was the fact that the officers obviously saw something in Ender, since they had promoted him. Maybe Ender did have enough influence with the teachers to ice somebody. Bastard, said Bonzo. It isn't my fault you gave me that order in front of everybody, Ender said. But if you want, I'll pretend you won this argument. Then tomorrow you can tell me you changed your mind. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I don't want the other guys to think you backed down. You wouldn't be able to command as well. Bonzo hated him for it, for the kindness. Ender tried to understand why. Maybe it seemed to Bonzo as if Ender were granting him his command as a favor. Galling, and yet he had no choice. No choice about anything. Well, it was Bonzo's own fault for giving Ender an unreasonable order. Still, he would care only that Ender had beaten him, and then rubbed his nose in it by being magnanimous. "I'll have your ass someday," Bonzo said. "Probably," said Ender. The lights out buzzer sounded. Ender walked back into the room, looking dejected, beaten, angry. The other boys drew the obvious conclusion. And in the morning, as Ender was leaving for breakfast, Bonzo stopped him and spoke loudly. "I changed my mind, Pinprick. Maybe by practicing with your launchies you'll learn something and I can trade you easier. Anything to get rid of you faster." "Thank you, sir," Ender said. "Anything," whispered Bonzo. "I hope you're iced." Ender smiled gratefully and left the room. After breakfast, he practiced again with Petra. All afternoon, he watched Bonzo drill and figured out ways to destroy his army. During free play, he and Eli and the others worked themselves to exhaustion. "I can do this," thought Ender as he lay in his bed, his muscles throbbing, unknotting themselves. "I can handle it." Salamander Army had a battle 4 days later. Ender followed behind the real soldiers as they jogged along the corridors to the battle room. There were 2 ribbons along the walls, the green, green, brown of Salamander and the black, white, black of Condor. When they came to the place where the battle room had always been, the corridor split instead, with green, green, brown leading to the left and black, white, black to the right. Around another turn to the right, and the army stopped in front of a blank wall. The tunes formed up in silence. Ender stayed behind them all. Bonzo was giving his instructions. A, take the handles and go up. B, left. C, right. D, down. He saw that the tunes were oriented to follow instructions, then added, "And you, Pinprick, wait 4 minutes, then come just inside the door. Don't even take your gun off your suit." Ender nodded. Suddenly, the wall behind Bonzo became transparent. Not a wall at all then, but a force field. The battle room was different too. Huge brown boxes were suspended in midair, partially obstructing the view. So these were the obstacles that the soldiers called stars. They were distributed seemingly at random. Bonzo seemed not to care where they were. Apparently the soldiers already knew how to handle the stars. But it soon became clear to Ender, as he sat and watched the battle room from the corridor, that they did not know how to handle the stars. They did know how to soft land on one and use it for cover, the tactics of assaulting the enemy's position on a star. They showed no sense at all of which stars mattered. They persisted in assaulting stars that could have been bypassed by wall sliding to a more advanced position. The other commander was taking advantage of Bonzo's neglect of strategy. Condor Army forced the salamanders into costly assaults. Fewer and fewer salamanders were unfrozen for the attack on the next star. It was clear after only 4 minutes that Salamander Army could not defeat the enemy by attacking. Ender stepped through the gate. He drifted slightly downward. The battle rooms he had practiced in always had their doors at floor level. For real battles, however, the door was set in the middle of the wall, as far from the floor as from the ceiling. Abruptly, he felt himself reorient. as he had in the shuttle. What had been down was now up, and now sideways. In Nolo, there was no reason to stay oriented the way he had been in the corridor. It was impossible to tell, looking at the perfectly square doors, which way had been up. And it didn't matter. For now, Ender had found the orientation that made sense. The enemy's gate was down. The object of the game was to fall toward the enemy's home. Ender made the motions that oriented himself in his new direction. Instead of being spread out, his whole body presented to the enemy. Now Ender's legs pointed toward them. He was a much smaller target. Someone saw him. He was, after all, drifting aimlessly in the open. Instinctively, he pulled his legs up under him. At that moment, he was flashed, and the legs of his suit froze in position. His arms remained unfrozen, for without a direct body to hit, only the limbs that were shot froze up. It occurred to Ender that if he had not been presenting his legs to the enemy, it would have been his body they hit. He would have been immobilized. Since Bonzo had ordered him not to draw his weapon, Ender continued to drift, not moving his head or arms, as if they had been frozen too. The enemy ignored him and concentrated their fire on the soldiers who were firing at them. It was a bitter battle. Outnumbered now, Salamander army gave ground stubbornly. The battle disintegrated into a dozen individual shootouts. Bonzo's discipline paid off now, for each salamander that froze took at least one enemy with him. No one ran or panicked. Everyone remained calm and aimed carefully. Petra was especially deadly. Condor Army noticed it and took great effort to freeze her. They froze her shooting arm first, and her stream of curses was only interrupted when they froze her completely and the helmet clamped down on her jaw. In a few minutes it was over. Salamander Army offered no more resistance. Ender noted with pleasure that Condor could only muster the minimal 5 soldiers necessary to open the gate to victory. 4 of them touched their helmets to the lighted spots at the 4 corners of Salamander's door, while the 5th passed through the force field. That ended the game. The lights came back on to their full brightness, and Anderson came out of the teacher door. I could have drawn my gun, thought Ender, as the enemy approached the door. I could have drawn my gun and shot just one of them, and they would have been too few. The game would have been a draw. Without 4 men to touch the 4 corners and a 5th man to pass through the gate, Condor would have had no victory. Bonzo, you ass, I could have saved you from this defeat. Maybe even turned it into victory, since they were sitting there, easy targets, and they wouldn't have known at first where the shots were coming from. I'm a good enough shot for that. But orders were orders, and Ender had promised to obey. He did get some satisfaction out of the fact that on the official tally Salamander Army recorded, not the expected 41 disabled or eliminated, but rather 40 eliminated and 1 damaged. Bonzo couldn't understand it until he consulted Anderson's book and realized who it was. I was only damaged, Bonzo, thought Ender. I could still shoot. He expected Bonzo to come to him and say, next time when it's like that, you can shoot. But Bonzo didn't say anything to him at all until the next morning after breakfast. Of course, Bonzo ate in the commander's mess, but Ender was pretty sure the odd score would cause as much stir there as it did in the soldiers' dining hall. In every other game that wasn't a draw, every member of the losing team was either eliminated, totally frozen, or disabled, which meant they had some body parts still unfrozen, but were unable to shoot or inflict damage on the enemy. Salamander was the only losing army, with one man in the damaged but active category. Ender volunteered no explanation, but the other members of Salamander Army let it be known why it happened. And when other boys asked him why he hadn't disobeyed orders and fired, he calmly answered, "I obey orders." After breakfast, Bonzo looked for him. "The order still stands," he said, "and don't you forget it." "It will cost you, you fool. I may not be a good soldier, but I can still help, and there's no reason you shouldn't let me." Ender said nothing. An interesting side effect of the battle was that Ender emerged at the top of the soldier efficiency list. Since he hadn't fired a shot, he had a perfect record on shooting. No misses at all. And since he had never been eliminated or disabled, his percentage there was excellent. No one else came close. It made a lot of boys laugh, and others were angry, but on the prized efficiency list, Ender was now the leader. He kept sitting out the army practice sessions, and kept working hard on his own, with Petra in the mornings and his friends at night. More launchies were joining them now, not on a lark, but because they could see results. They were getting better and better. Ender and Eli stayed ahead of them, though. In part, it was because Eli kept trying new things, which forced Ender to think of new tactics to cope with them. In part, it was because they kept making stupid mistakes, which suggested things to do that no self-respecting, well-trained soldier would ever have tried. Many of the things they attempted turned out to be useless, but it was always fun, always exciting, and enough things worked that they knew it was helping them. Evening was the best time of the day. The next two battles were easy Salamander victories. Ender came in after 4 minutes and remained untouched by the defeated enemy. Ender began to realize that Condor Army, which had beaten them, was unusually good. Salamander, weak as Bonzo's grasp of strategy might be, was one of the better teams, climbing steadily in the ratings, clawing for 4th place with Rat Army. Ender turned 7. They weren't much for dates and calendars at the battle school, but Ender had found out how to bring up the date on his desk, and he noticed his birthday. The school noticed it too. They took his measurements and issued him a new Salamander uniform and a new flash suit for the battle room. He went back to the barracks with the new clothing on. It felt strange and loose, like his skin no longer fit properly. He wanted to stop at Petra's bunk and tell her about his home, about what his birthdays were usually like. Just tell her it was his birthday so she'd say something about it being a happy one. But nobody told birthdays. It was childish. It was what Landsiders did. Cakes and silly customs. Valentine baked him his cake on his 6th birthday. It fell, and it was terrible. Nobody knew how to cook anymore. It was the kind of crazy thing Valentine would do. Everybody teased Valentine about it, but Ender saved a little bit of it in his cupboard. Then they took out his monitor, and he left, and for all he knew, it was still there, a little piece of greasy yellow dust. Nobody talked about home, not among the soldiers. There had been no life before battle school. Nobody got letters, and nobody wrote any. Everybody pretended that they didn't care. But I do care, thought Ender. The only reason I'm here is so that a bugger won't shoot out Valentine's eye, won't blast her head open like the soldiers in the videos of the first battles with the buggers, won't split her head with a beam so hot that her brains burst the skull and spill out like rising bread dough, the way it happens in my worst nightmares, in my worst nights, when I wake up trembling but silent, must keep silent, or they'll hear that I miss my family. I want to go home. It was better in the morning. Home was merely a dull ache in the back of his memory, a tiredness in his eyes. That morning Bonzo came in as they were dressing. "Flash suits," he called. It was a battle. Ender's fourth game. The enemy was Leopard Army. It would be easy. Leopard was new, and it was always in the bottom quarter in the standings. It had been organized only 6 months ago, with Paul Slattery as its commander. Ender put on his new battlesuit and got into line. Bonzo pulled him roughly out of line and made him march at the end. "You didn't need to do that," Ender said silently. "You could have let me stay in line." Ender watched from the corridor. Paul Slattery was young, but he was sharp. He had some new ideas. He kept his soldiers moving, darting from star to star, wall sliding to get behind and above the stolid salamanders. Ender smiled. Bonzo was hopelessly confused, and so were his men. Leopards seemed to have men in every direction. However, the battle was not as lopsided as it seemed. Ender noticed that Leopard was losing a lot of men too. Their reckless tactics exposed them too much. What mattered, however, was that Salamander felt defeated. They had surrendered the initiative completely. Though they were still fairly evenly matched with the enemy, they huddled together like the last survivors of a massacre, as if they hoped the enemy would overlook them in the carnage. Ender slipped slowly through the gate, oriented himself so the enemy's gate was down, and drifted slowly eastward to a corner where he wouldn't be noticed. He even fired at his own legs to hold them in the kneeling position that offered him the best protection. He looked to any casual glance like another frozen soldier who had drifted helplessly out of the battle. With Salamander army waiting abjectly for destruction, Leopard obligingly destroyed them. When Salamander finally stopped firing, Leopard had 9 boys left. They formed up and started to open the Salamander gate. Ender aimed carefully with a straight arm, as Petra had taught him. Before anyone knew what was happening, he froze 3 of the soldiers who were about to press their helmets against the lighted corners of the door. Then some of the others spotted him and fired, but at first they hit only his already frozen legs. It gave him time to get the last 2 men at the gate. Leopard had only 4 men left unfrozen when Ender was finally hit in the arm and disabled. The game was a draw, and they had never hit him in the body. Paul Slattery was furious, but there had been nothing unfair about it. Everyone in Leopard Army assumed that it had been a strategy of Bonzo's to leave a man till the last minute. It didn't occur to them that little Ender had fired against orders. But Salamander Army knew. Bonzo knew, and Ender could see from the way his commander looked at him that Bonzo hated him for rescuing him from total defeat. "I don't care," Ender told himself. "It will just make me easier to trade away, and in the meantime, you won't drop so far in the standings. Just trade me. I've learned all I'm ever going to learn from you. How to fail with style, that's all you know, Bonzo." What have I learned so far? Ender listed things in his mind as he undressed by his bunk. The enemy's gate is down. Use my legs as a shield in battle. A small reserve, held back until the end of the game, can be decisive. And soldiers can sometimes make decisions that are smarter than the orders they've been given. Naked, he was about to climb into bed when Bonzo came toward him, his face hard and set. "I have seen Peter like this," thought Ender. silent with murder in his eye. But Bonzo is not Peter. Bonzo has more fear. Wiggin, I finally traded you. I was able to persuade a rat army that your incredible place on the efficiency list is more than an accident. You go over there tomorrow. Thank you, sir, Ender said. Perhaps he sounded too grateful. Suddenly Bonzo swung at him, caught his jaw with a vicious open-handed slap. It knocked Ender sideways into his bunk, and he almost fell. Then Bonzo slugged him hard in the stomach. Ender dropped to his knees. You disobeyed me, Bonzo said, loudly for all to hear. No good soldier ever disobeys. Even as he cried from the pain, Ender could not help but take vengeful pleasure in the murmurs he heard rising through the barracks. You fool, Bonzo. You aren't enforcing discipline, you're destroying it. They know I turned defeat into a draw, and now they see how you repay me. You made yourself look stupid in front of everyone. What is your discipline worth now? The next day, Ender told Petra that for her sake, the shooting practice in the morning would have to end. Bonzo didn't need anything that looked like a challenge now, and so she'd better stay clear of Ender for a while. She understood perfectly. Besides, she said, you're as close to being a good shot as you'll ever be. He left his desk and flash suit in the locker. He would wear his salamander uniform until he could get to the commissary and change it for the brown and black of Rat. He had brought no possessions with him. He would take none away. There were none to have. Everything of value was in the school computer or his own head and hands. He used one of the public desks in the game room to register for an Earth Gravity personal combat course during the hour immediately after breakfast. He didn't plan to get vengeance on Bonzo for hitting him, but he did intend that no one would be able to do that to him again. Jesus Christ, my throat hurts so bad. I need to start taking sips while I'm reading. But I feel like it would take away from the effect, so I try not to. The fact that this child is just turning 7 years old, is crazy. And the fact also that you could get so mad at a 7-year-old that you slap them across the face. Actually, maybe I get it. Actually, maybe that's warranted. Anyway, I feel like even though I have been reading this over several months, I've read 130 pages over, I don't know how many months I started this ago, how many months ago I started this, but I think it was like May or June. 4 months, of reading 130 pages. Sorry, my brain isn't working. I'm enjoying the plot. It's going very slowly for me, obviously, and I'm not probably getting everything that I would if I was reading it just back to back. But I feel like this is the point at which I'm like, like what's this little kid gonna do? What's this little kid up to? You know? I kind of am starting to root for him. And also Bonzo, I know in the last like chapter part I had said there's no way I'm gonna remember to say Bonzo instead of Bonzo because it's spelled like Bonzo, but then I was able to say Bonzo again. It's only because I had uploaded the last video like 5 minutes before I started recording this one, and I had gone back to my commentary on that video to see what I had said because I forgot the plot completely. And I saw that I had said that. So I did pronounce it correctly. Because I'm a professional, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm interested. I'm enjoying the book. It's taking a really long time to read, but I am enjoying it. And welcome to our home also. We moved in a week and a half ago. And so far so good. So yeah, now that we're past the move, hopefully I will be able to read more, but the problem is you're always home. So I don't often have time to read, especially not for 40 minutes. And I still have more than 200 pages left. More than 240 pages left. So that's a lot of pages. I'm about a third of the way done, huh? I'm hoping to be done by Christmas, but we'll see. I'm gonna try not to rush it, and also I just simply don't have the time alone. So we'll see what happens. But moral of the story, reading this book makes my throat hurt, and suddenly I am a fan of a 7-year-old. And that's all. Okay, bye!